or at least you should find all the chapter houses listed there. Then you have the American Indian Area Reservation or Statistical Entity Area only. And we're going to jump into this in just a minute. And this is excluding that off-land trust land. And the off-land trust land typically in New Mexico really doesn't have any population associated with it. So you would not be wrong if you selected this to start pulling data for New Mexico. And then we have American Indian Alaskan Area Native Homeland, and this is that whole tribal area. And I'll show you the difference between the statistical entity only and the homeland for us. And we're going to start with that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take the reservation or statistical entity only. And because I've been here, you'll see it pulls up all tribal areas in the United States when you click on that. But we just want those areas that fall within New Mexico. So I'm going to click up here at the very top in that fine print. It says within other geographies, and you'll click the plus sign and you'll see where it says state. And we'll scroll down and click on New Mexico. And this actually gives us all the tribal areas in New Mexico. And when you come into the data like this, I'm going to note that you'll see here where it says Navajo Nation, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and you get to the very end and it says New Mexico. So this is just the New Mexico portion. So when we take that statistical entity, I'm going to get the New Mexico portion. And a double check for you is you actually have to click to get all of the pueblos and the tribal areas in New Mexico, each one of these. And there's only 29, so it's not too long. I'm going to go down and do it just because I like to click a lot. And I just want to show you what this looks like when we pull this data.
And while Susan's doing that, just to let you know, they will be putting in a select all. They're slowly going through and finding those that need to get the select alls. This is one of them.
Yeah. So when I click on that, I get all the tables here. And these are all the American Community Surveys tables. But maybe what I want is actually decennial census data. And just to show you that, file 1, 2, and 3, all of these are not actually available yet. You'll still need to take the redistricting data. Those other tables should be coming out for us from now, from the end of March through August. So I'm going to take that. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at P1 for race table. And just note, if you click this little plus sign, you're going to get, you could see both 2010 or 2020 data. I'm actually going to take the 2020 data. And here's my data. The Pueblos run across the top. And because this is 100% count data, you'll notice that there are no margins of error. On this tool, this area acts like an Excel spreadsheet. So you can highlight what you want and copy it with headers, export it to an Excel or CSV. So once you get to this point, you can download your data very quickly, or you could use the toolbars here up at the top. But I kind of want to show this really cool thing. If you click the Map It tool, here is the tribal areas in New Mexico. I'm giving it, and you can see that what we've selected is just New Mexico, because you can see these tribal areas in New Mexico. And I'm going to come in a little bit to show you some of the details, and so that we can pick up. As you zoom in, you'll see that the titles start to click in. And yes, the Navajo Nation is checkerboard out here. It's kind of tough to tell where the Navajo Nation sits within relationship to counties or whatever. So up here in our toolbar, there's this boundaries. And one of the cool things you can do is you can turn on your county, both the shape, but also the county names. And you can see how Navajo Nation there is in San Juan County, but also in McKinley County. And it's that checkerboard. I recently had a question about, well, what county is Santa Clara in? We're going to go in. This tool I find so useful to help me. And you can see Santa Clara Pueblo there. It goes over the boundaries of Santa Fe County, Rio Arriba County, and also it's kind of the top of Los Alamos, but then also you see it's in Sandoval County. And so I really find this a useful tool when I'm trying to break down where population is within the state for tribal areas, but also place data and stuff. And just to note, once you're happy with a map or something, you can copy the URL at the top here and save that and come back to this map at any time that you need. I'm going to turn off the boundaries there. If you need to get back to the table of data, well, actually, before I step into that, I just want to show right now the variable is total population that's showing up here. You can click on the variables within the table, and we could look at just tribal for American Indian, and we could change that so that you could see the total counts for that. So a lot of times you're working with different tables and you want to just visualize the population or a particular statistic. You can do that using this mapping tool. I just love it. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents. I'll click on the table. This takes you back to whatever I have selected here is the number here. You can actually highlight this and cut and paste this data if you needed to into an Excel spreadsheet. So once you get, oftentimes you're working with a table with a lot of variables, but you really only want to grab the data from one variable, you can do that. But I actually want to go to the full table now and exit the mapping system. And I'm back here at the table of data where I can now download or print. You can also transpose the data so that you end up with your race totals across the top. So that's one technique. We're going to go back to the landing page here. And feel free, because we're such a small group today, if you have a question, we're going through it. I don't have a problem with you going ahead and unmuting and asking me a question. I'm going to go back to the advanced search because I told you here when we were at the geography tab that there was that statistical entity, or there's the next one down, which is American Indian area. And you might want to know, well, what's the real difference when I come into this? And I'm going to again do the same trick I did before, where I went within other geographies and I went within a state and I click on New Mexico. And here, like Barb was saying, that you actually can click here, all American Indians within New Mexico, all the tribal areas. And I don't have to do more than that. I'm going to go back to, I'm just going to hit my search button again. And we're going to go back and I'm going to just, for the fun of it, I'm going to pull age and sex data from American Community Survey. So, and I want you to note that I took 1 year estimates. And if we scroll across the top, you'll see that the only tribal area that will pull for 1 year estimates is the Navajo Nation, because they're the only area with enough population for 1 year estimates. So sometimes if you're pulling data and you only see Navajo Nation, you'll just note that you need to change it from the 1 year estimates to the 5 year estimates. And then it goes all the way. So 5 year estimates are available for all populations, all the way down to block groups, whereas the 1 year estimates are only available for populations of 65,000 or greater. And you'll see we now have Acoma. We have all the Pueblos here. I'm going to go through. So I'm going to hit the map again because this shows you the difference from taking the statistical entity versus the total tribal area. And in this case, we get not just Navajo Nation in New Mexico, but also the total Navajo Nation in Arizona and Utah. And you can see for Southern Ute Reservation, you can see that they're also in Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. You can see the Jicarilla just barely go over into Colorado. And then down here, you'll see Zuni has a little bit in Arizona. So when you take, and that's the big difference between those two groups, is one, you can get the statistical entity, you can get just within New Mexico, excluding where the tribes go into other states. Whereas when you take the second option, the total tribe, you'll get them including the other state data. So that hopefully helps you think about what you need to select. So another trick, we're going to go back here and I'm going to select tribal data again. advanced
Susan,
search.
before you
Oh, go
move
ahead.
on, we often need, this is from Mark. We often need to know the cross tab of Hispanic and race. Is that an option in the tool?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. So let's, and it has to do, Mark, with how the Census Bureau asked the race and ethnicity question. And I'm thinking, so it might not be, it still will be data.census.gov, but you may actually have to step into the micro public use sample data to get that particular crosstab. But let me see if I can do it showing another geography here. So I'm going to see if I can get to your data. So I'm going to do geography here. And in this case, we're going to do the American Indian tribal subdivision and remainder. And I'm kind of focusing a lot on geography because that's the really big difference between all the other data that you're going to pull. And when you sit and you look at Native American Indian tribal data, it's really a geography definition, which has its issues. And the issues it has, anyways, I wanted to show when I grab Navajo Nation, notice that the areas you have within the Navajo Nation are your chapters.
Let me read the rest of what he just wrote.
Go.
I know, but for the iPads, they crosswalk into a linear combination. So from comparing to some national higher education data, we need to know the intersection.
I'll see what I can do for you. And it's a good question. Anyways, this is still one of those geographies where you don't get a select all yet. We hope that they'll do this soon. But if you're working with Navajo data, I wanted to show that the chapter data is here. And you can get at the chapter data two ways. All right, so I am going to do, and this is a good question. We're going to do P2 just for your discussion here on the Hispanic Latino by race. So you can see here we have the chapter data going across the top. And again, you note that we're working with decennial census 100% count data because there are no margins of error. We have Hispanic or Latino. And I think this gets you your cross that you're looking for, Mark, because we have not Hispanic or Latino, a one race, population of two races, all by the breakouts, three races, and then four races, 5 and 6. Does that get us there?
You're getting a hands up symbol.
Yeah. And this is on tribal land, so that's kind of fun. This might be, and I'm looking at this, I just have to think about it. So you get your Hispanic, Latino choice, and then here we get that not Hispanic or Latino by all the other races. I think we're close.
Mark, why don't you unmute and chat?
Yeah, so we collect the data the way the census asks it. So we get a flag for all the possible answers. But in iPads, and for a lot of reporting, there's sort of, you crosswalk the 64 possible combinations into a set of like 9 categories. So if somebody is Hispanic, then that's what gets counted. If they're counted as American Indian, only if that's all that they check and they're non-Hispanic. So there are times where I'll do a count of everybody who checked American Indian at all, and of those individuals, how many checked Hispanic and how many checked non-Hispanic, but a second race or more than one other race in addition to American Indian. So you kind of end up with a min-max. You know, you have anybody that checked American Indian, but they might have checked other things. And then you have those that's the only thing they checked was American Indian. And for comparing to the national IPEDS data, you really need the min, where the crosswalk is done. So if I'm looking at census data and I'm comparing it to see, are we representative in our overall total enrollment, for example, of the population being served? It's helpful if I'm able to do that crosstab and say, you know, and combine it together. I mean, it's an imperfect system, but it came out of the way they redid the questions back in 2010. And I was playing around some yesterday trying to come up with the numbers I wanted, and oftentimes I could get, you know, it was hard to say, okay, of those who did say they were Hispanic, it would also be nice to know how many of the people that said the Hispanic also checked American Indian, for example. And I'm not sure that was in that example you gave.
It's not, but there's a way to get to it, and I'll show it to you in a minute. Anyways, I did want to show here, this is what the chapter houses look like if you're working with chapter house data for the Navajo Nation. And that's where that, when we're looking at the geography, you select the, all right, the brain is gone, that you subtract the tribal subdivision and remainder for that data. So I hope that those three examples actually help clarify how you pull tribal data in New Mexico, and how you see the data options that you can pull for tribal data from the census. So let's go play with Mark's question, because I know some of you also are in higher ed. And if you can't find a table that's pre-tabulated, and the second link is find tables. You can come in and pull tables and table numbers in the second example. But you may get to a point where you're like, well, I'm almost there, but it's not quite what I want. You want to then scroll all the way down on this data.census.gov, and you want to do the microdata. We're going to go into microdata. And I just want to show this. Remember that we're working with tribal data. We never want to use the 1-year sample unless you're working with the Navajo Nation. You're always going to want to go for your 5-year estimates. And I'm going to just leave this at 2021 because it's the most current. So once you're here, you could actually pull the codes, and you can see down here, and I'm just going to slowly show. So maybe this is what I want, American Indian. And then we're looking for Hispanic. And I don't know which one is Hispanic, so I'm gonna search for it here in the label. I'm gonna try to search for it. So I start to type this, I can see I've got two choices here. I have the estimate or the recode. I would probably go with the estimate to start with. I'm going to select my geography. We happen to know we just want New Mexico. So, and I'm going to tell you, you're not on this. When you step into the public use microsample data, the problem that you're going to have with this is that you can either get statewide, or you're going to get the public use microsample areas for your sub-state. So your sub-state, you'll see, and I'm going to go into this, is that it breaks it up. You had to have 100,000 population to be able to use your public use microsample data. So you get more detail in the bigger cities, but then in the, like San Juan County, you're going to get a PUMA so the geographies are different. You're not going to get the geographies down to the detail that you're used to. Because I want to focus on, but you can get some sub-state, but because I kind of want to focus on where you're going with your data, I'm going to just choose New Mexico. I'm going to go to my data chart. Here are my two data items. You can go in and recode these to what you need. And I'm not going to go through that today, but I just kind of want to show you what the data might look like. I don't think I need to I'm just going to view the table. You can go in and recode it. There's some tutorials on that, so you can get, and you can see down here, I get New Mexico, and across the top, these are the people who said they were American Indian, Alaskan Native, but then you can see how many said not Hispanic, Mexican, Puerto Rican, so you have the no's and the yeses for that. So hopefully, Mark, that kind of gets you where you need to go. Yeah, there's the ones who said Spaniard. And in New Mexico, I'm not surprised that there were a lot of yeses there. And all other Spanish or Hispanic, Latino. So I think that gets you where you need, but there's a little bit of playing with this tool that you would need to do. And as a matter of fact, this is a good segue. I'm going to close this out. And I want to talk about a couple of other places on the Census Bureau website that you need to be aware of when working with tribal data. So I'm going to step into American, and this is, so let's see if I can do this. This is on the Census website under survey programs. There is a web page for nothing but American Community Survey resources for American Indian and Alaskan Native populations. They've got a nice little clip there, but they've got information on the geographies, their data collection process, and what the data are used for, but also, and this is the big thing, is they have these two handbooks, one for the American Community Survey, but also this handbook on what you need to know for using and accessing American Indian, Alaska Native data. It's a wonderful handbook and I recommend reading it. And then they had a couple of flyers here. So if there's any questions you have, this is kind of like the landing page for that. Let's see if I got a copy, and I'm not sure if I can see the chat. There we go. I can see the chat. I'll post that page in the chat for you. There's also this tool that the Census Bureau puts out called My Tribal Area. And I'd already pulled up Zuni, but you can change this if you're working with Acoma. And it does, at the top, you see it pulls a lot of quick data down. So oftentimes, if you just need something quick, we got people, we got jobs. So it pulls more than just American, well, it pulls mostly American Community Survey, but it pulls even some of those topics, those high-level topics for occupation and industry data, housing. So sometimes I'll tell if you need something quick and you know it would be at these high levels, this is a good place to start. Housing, economy. I'll click the education one in a second. And I believe these are the top data profile tables, if that's what it's pulling. So there's that, and I'll put this. I'll put the tribal area in chat also. Next, and probably, so this is the question I get a lot, or I've got more than once, which is, when is the Census Bureau going to update the American Indian, Alaskan Native tribal tables? So there's some specific tables that do come out every decennial census that are kind of 100% count sort of things. The last release was for 2010, and you'll notice it was released 2 years after the decennial census. We expect these tables probably to come out later this fall. But these are some of the tribal data that people are waiting for, and I wanted to note this page to keep an eye on for this fall. Yay! So I think those were the things that I wanted to cover. And then just for the discussion that we had on that Mark brought up. Oops, I want to go to American Community Survey. So if you take the survey programs up here, American Community Survey, on the left-hand side, once you're on this page, there is, what I'm looking for is microdata there. And this is public use microsample data, where if you can't quite get that tabulation, this would be the documentation I would point you to on how to use this. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can follow to figure out how to use that public microdata sample to pull the actual specific piece that you're looking for. So with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing my desktop. Yay! And
There's also the Census Academy. They're running a webinar on the MDAT microdata area tables. And there's also some YouTube Census YouTube videos that are out there, Susan, for tips and tricks on the MDAT table.
Now I'm looking, because I know what you're talking about. And I didn't prepare a tab, and I should have. Census Academy. And I think I could put that link in chat here. So for further information, there's a lot of wonderful, and the Census Academy is a good place to pull up both upcoming webinars, but also recordings that have already been made on how to navigate these. So anybody else have a question?
In one other spot, on the data.census.gov site itself, if you scroll down, there are, and that's where those YouTubes are located. They are like upwards of 4 minutes, the longest one, on how to do different steps within. And we're also going to post this recording.
So if we don't have questions, I am happy to return to you 15 minutes. But I actually want to thank all of you for attending. And if you need to contact anybody that you saw here this morning, I'm willing to share emails if you guys need that. Because I know all of you actually work with and use census data. But all of you are also very specifically interested in tribal data. And I know that as I see I know there's some tribal consultations coming up. I also know, isn't there coming up in April, a tribal meeting at SIPI? And I forget, it's a conference or something that's coming up in April. Let me see if I got it on my calendar. It should be on my calendar anyways. I just remember somebody talking about that. It's not on my calendar at the moment, so it must have been a meeting I was in yesterday. But so if you're interested in further tribal data, I'll see if I can find that and send you all a link to the upcoming tribal meeting. So with that, if there's no questions, feel free to unmute and ask. Yeah, go ahead.
We have those 4 tribal representatives too, and we'll have to find out the name of the one for New Mexico, who is also working with the tribes and can also help find data. They're experts on doing that now.
Oh, cool. That's a note. So one of the things I'll do, because Barb said the tribal liaisons, I'll make sure to send you all their contact information probably tomorrow. Cool. Well, thank you all for attending. I appreciate your interest.
Thank you for hosting and organizing.
Yeah, and poor Amadeo, I've decided that I'm bad for his health.
Mm.
So with that, you guys all have a great Wednesday.
Thanks so much.